Hey guys, Billy the Bib here, and today we're celebrating Christmas, cause it's the Christmas season. It's pretty close to Christmas anyway. I personally like Christmas a lot. Oh hey Lizard Man, come over here closer so I can hear you, Lizard Man.
Hello, Billy. I really got a greedy this Christmas.
Well, listen here. I got just the story for that. I'll read you A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. Just had to put on my glasses here. Now I'll read you it. Why don't you take a seat here, Lizard Man? You're gonna like this story. Part 1, A Christmas Carol, in prose, being a ghost story of Christmas. Get out here, Key Cat. A Christmas Carol. Stave 1. Marley's Ghost. Marley was dead to begin with. There's no doubt about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, and the undertaker. Hey there, Keycat, you want to listen to? And the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it, and Scrooge's name was good upon change for anything he put his name to. Old Marley was dead as a doornail. Mind, I don't mean to say that I know of any own knowledge what there's particularly dead regard of coffin nail, as the deadest piece of ironmongery in the trade. But the wisdom of an ancestors is in the smile, and the unhallowed hands shall not disturb it, or the country's done for. You will, therefore, permit me to repeat emphatically that Marley was as dead as a doornail. I told you he was dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead. Of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge probably killed him. Scrooge and he were partners for I don't know how many years. Scrooge partners for I don't know how many years. I read it again. Scrooge was his sole executor, his sole administrator, his sole assign, and his sole residuary legatee, his sole friend, and sole mourner. Even Scrooge was not so dread sole mourner, or dread so caught up by the sad event. But that was by an excellent man of business on the very day of the funeral, and so honest with the undoubted bargain. Page 2! Can't believe we got there already. The mention of Marley's funeral brings me back to the point that I started from. There's no doubt that Marley was dead. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come from the story. I am going to relate, if we were not perfectly convinced that Hamlet's father, who's Hamlet, died before the play began, there would be nothing more remarkable in this taking a stroll at night in this easterly world. I like Easter, it's a good one too. Upon his own ramparts, there would be any other kind of middle-aged gentleman rashly turning out after dark in the stands, after dark in a breezy spot, say St. Paul's churchyard, for instance, literally to astonish his son's weak mind. Scrooge never painted out old Marley's name. There it stood, years afterwards, above the warehouse door. Scrooge and Marley. The firm was known as Scrooge and Marley. Sometimes people knew the business called Scrooge, and sometimes Marley, but he answered to both names. It was all the same to him. Oh! But there was a tight-fisted hand at the grindstone. Scrooge, a squeezing and wrenching and grasping and scrapping and clutching and covetous old sinner, hard and sharp as a flint, from which no steel had ever struck out. Oh, a generous fire. Secret and self-contained, and solitary as an oyster. The cold within him froze his old features, nipped his pointed nose, shriveled his cheek, stiffened his gait, and made his eyes red. His thin lips were blue, and he spoke out shrewdly in his grating voice. It sounded like he was greeting, at least. A frosty rime was on his head, and on his eyebrows and his weary chin. He carried his own low temperature always about with him. His office in the dog days. Wonder what the dog days were. And didn't thaw at 1 degree at Christmas. External heat and cold had little influence over Scrooge. No warmth could warm, no wintry weather chill him. No wind that blew was bitterer than he. No falling snow was more intent upon its purpose. No pelting rain less open to entreaty. Foul weather didn't know where to have him, and the heaviest rain and snow and hail and sleet could boast the advantage over him in only one respect. Let me see, where was I again? That kitty cat distracted me. Oh yeah. They often came down handsomely, and Scrooge never did. Nobody ever stopped him in the street to say, with gladsome, "My dear Scrooge, how are you? When will you come to see me?" No beggars implored him to bestow a trifle. No children asked him what it was o'clock. No man or woman ever once in all his life inquired the way to such and such place of Scrooge. Even the blind men's dogs appeared to know him, and when they saw him coming on, they would tug their owners into doorways and courts, and then they would wag their tails as though they said, "No eye at all is better than an evil eye, dark master." But what did Scrooge care? It was the very thing he liked, to edge his way along the crowded paths of life, warning all human sympathy to keep its distance, was what the knowing ones call nuts to Scrooge. Once upon a time, of all the good days in the year, on Christmas Eve, old Scrooge sat busy in his counting house. It was cold, bleak, bitter weather, foggy withal, and he could hear all the people in the court outside going wheezing up and down, beating their hands upon the breasts and stamping their feet upon the pavement stones to warm them. Yeah, the city clocks had pavement stones, had only just gone to 3, but it was quite dark already, and it had been light all day. and candles were flaring in the windows of neighboring offices like ruddy smears on a palpable brown air. The fog came pouring in every chink and keyhole, and it was so dense without that although the court was the narrowest, the houses opposite mere were phantoms to see the dingy cloud come drooping down, obscuring everything. One might have thought that nature lived hard by and was brewing on a large scale. The door of Scrooge's counting house was open, and he might keep an eye on his clerk, whose in the little dismal little cell beyond a sort of tank was copying letters. Scrooge had a very small fire, but the clerk's fire was so much smaller it looked like one coal. But he couldn't replenish it, for Scrooge kept the coal box in his own room. And so surely as the clerk came in with the shovel, the master predicted that it would be necessary for them to part. Wherefore, the clerk put his white comforter and tried to warm himself at the candle, in which effort not being a man with strong imagination has failed. A Merry Christmas, Uncle! God save you! Cried a cheerful voice. It was the voice of Scrooge's nephew, who came upon him quickly, and that this was the first intimidation. Or no, it's not intimidation, it's intimation. I don't know what that means. He had his own approach. Bah! Said Scrooge. Humbug! And he had so heated himself with the rapid walking in the fog-soaked frost and the nephew Scrooge that he was all in a glow. His face was ruddy and handsome. His eyes sparkled and his breath smoked again. Christmas a humbug, Uncle, said Scrooge's nephew. You don't mean that. I am sure. I do, said Scrooge. Merry Christmas. What right you have to be merry? What reason you have to be merry? You're poor enough. Come then, returned the nephew gaily. What right do you have to be dismal? What reason you have to be morose? You're rich enough. Scrooge, having no better answer ready to spur at the moment, said, Bah! Again, and followed it up with a humbug. Don't be cross, Uncle, said the nephew. What else can it be? Returned the uncle. When I live in a world such as this with fools, Merry Christmas, out upon a Merry Christmas, what's Christmas time to you but a time for paying bills without money, and a time for finding yourself a whole year older, but not an hour richer, a time for balancing your books and having every item in them through a round dozen a month present a debt against you? If I could work my will, said Scrooge indignantly, every idiot who goes about with Merry Christmas on his lips should be boiled with his own pudding. I like pudding. And buried with a stake of holly through his heart. He should. Uncle, pleaded his nephew. Nephew, returned the uncle sternly. Keep Christmas in your own way, and let me keep it in mine. Keep it, repeated Scrooge's nephew. But you don't keep it. Let me leave it alone then, said Scrooge. Much good has it ever done you? There are many things from which I might have derived good, but which I have not profited. I dare say, returned the nephew. Christmas among the rest. But I am sure I have always thought of Christmas time, when it was to come around, apart from the veneration due to its sacred name and origin, if anything belonging to it can be apart from that, as a good time, kind, forgiving, charitable, pleasant time, and the only time I know of in the long calendar of the year, when men and women seem by one consent to open their shut-up hearts freely, and to think of the people below them as they really were the fellow passengers to the grave, and not another race of creatures bound on other journeys. And therefore, uncle, though it has never put a scrap of gold and silver in my pocket, I believe that it has done me good and will do me good. And I say, God bless it. That was a beautiful scene right there. Almost made me cry. Page, well, now what would that be? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The clerk in the tank involuntarily applauded, becoming immediately sensible of the impropriety of. He poked the fire and extinguished the last frail spark forever. Let me hear another sound from you, said Scrooge, and you'll keep your Christmas by losing your situation. You're quite a powerful speaker, sir, he added, turning to his nephew. I wonder you don't go into the Parliament. Don't be angry, Uncle. Come, dine with us tomorrow. Scrooge said that he would see him. Yes, indeed, he did. He went the whole length of the expression. He said that he would see him in that extremely first. I don't even know what that's supposed to mean. But why? Cried Scrooge's nephew. Why? Why did you get married? Said Scrooge. Because I fell in love. Because you fell in love? Growled Scrooge. Urgh. As if there had only been one thing in the world more ridiculous than a Merry Christmas. Good afternoon. Nay, Uncle, but you never came to see me before that happened. Why give it a reason for not coming now? Good afternoon, said Scrooge. I want nothing to do with you. I got nothing to ask, nothing of you. Why can't we be friends? Why can't we be friends? Good afternoon, said Scrooge. I am sorry with all my heart to find you so resolute. We've never had any quarrel to which I have been a party, but I have made this trial a homage to Christmas, and I'll keep my Christmas humor to its last. So a Merry Christmas, Uncle. Good afternoon, said Scrooge, and a Happy New Year. Good afternoon, said Scrooge. His nephew left the room without an angry word. Notwithstanding, he stepped at the other door to bestow his greetings of the season on the clerk, who, cold as he was, was warmer than Scrooge, for he returned them cordially. "There's another fellow," muttered Scrooge, who overheard him. "My clerk, with 15 shillings a week, and a wife and family, talking about a Merry Christmas. I'll retire to Bedlam." This lunatic, in letting Scrooge's nephew out, had let 2 other people in. They were portly gentlemen, pleasant to behold, now stood with their hats off in Scrooge's office. They had books and papers in their hands and bowed to him. "Scrooge of Marley's, I believe," said one of the gentlemen, referring to his list. "Have I the pleasure of addressing Mr. Scrooge or Mr. Marley?" "Mr. Marley has been dead these 7 years," Scrooge replied. "He died 7 years ago this very night." "We've no doubt his liberality is well represented by his surviving partner," said the gentleman, presenting his credentials. It certainly was, for they had been 2 kindred spirits at the ominous word liberality. Scrooge frowned and shook his head and handed the credentials back. "At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge," said the gentleman, taking up a pen, "it is more than usually desirable that we should make some slight provision for the poor and destitute, who suffer greatly at this present time. Many thousands are in want of common necessities. Hundreds of thousands are in want of common comforts, sir." "Are there no prisons?" said Scrooge. "Plenty of prisons," said the gentleman, laying down the pen again. Page 7. "And the union's workhouses?" demanded Scrooge. "Are they still in operation?" "They are still," returned the gentleman. "I wish I could say they were not." "The treadmill and the poor law are in full vigor, then," said Scrooge. "Both very busy, sir." "Oh, I was afraid from what you said at first, and then something had occurred to stop them in their usual course. I'm very glad to hear it," said Scrooge, under the impression that they were scarcely furnished. "Christian cheer of mind or body of multitude," returned the gentleman, a few for his endeavoring "to raise a fund for the poor, to buy some meat and drink and means of warmth. We chose this time because it is a time of all others when want is keenly felt and abundance rejoices. What shall I put you down for?" said the gentleman. "Nothing," Scrooge replied. "You wish to be anonymous?" "I wish to be left alone," said Scrooge. "Since you ask me what I wish, gentlemen, that is my answer. I don't make myself merry around Christmas, and I can't afford to make idle people merry. I help to support establishments I've mentioned. They cost enough, and those who are badly off must go there. Many can't go there, and many would rather die." "If they would rather die," said Scrooge, "they had better do it, and decrease the surplus population. Besides, excuse me, I don't know that. But you might know it," observed the gentleman. "It's not my business," Scrooge returned. "It's enough for a man to understand his own business, not to interfere with other people's. Mine occupies me constantly. Good afternoon, gentlemen," seeing clearly that it would be useless. Their point the gentleman withdrew. Scrooge resumed his labors with an improved opinion of himself and a more facetious temper than he was usual with him. Meanwhile, the fog darkness thickened up, so people ran about flaring links, preferring their services to go to horses and carriages and conduct them on their way, and the ancient power of the church, whose gruff old bell was always peeping silly down at Scrooge. The Gothic window of the wall became invisible and struck the hours, the quarters, and the clouds with the tremulous vibrations afterwards, as if his teeth were chattering in its frozen head up there. I don't even know what just happened. The cold became intense. In the main street, in the corner of the court, some laborers were repairing the gas pipes and had lighted up a great fire in the brazier round, which was a party of ragged men and boys, warming their hands, winking their eyes before a blaze in rapture. The water plug, being left in solitude, its overflowings sullenly congealed and turned mithrianthic porcic ice. The brightness of the shops, where holly springs and berries crackled in the lamp heat of the windows, made pale faces ruddy as they passed. Poulterers' and grocers' trades became a splendid joke, and a glorious pageant with which was next to impossible to believe that such dull principles as bargain and sale had anything to do. The Lord Mayor in the stronghold of the mighty mansion house, sounds like a cool house, gave orders to his 50 cooks and butlers to keep Christmas as Lord Mayor's household should. And even the little tailor, whom he had given 5 shillings on the previous Monday for being drunk and bloodthirsty in the streets, stirred up tomorrow's pudding in his garret, while his lean wife and baby sallied out to buy beef.